You've been doing everything right for 8 months. No more impulse buys, no more takeout 3 times a week, an automatic transfer that hits your savings account the second your paycheck lands. You open the app expecting to see something that feels like progress, some visual proof that all that discipline actually did something. And there it is, a number that's technically higher than when you started, but barely. It looks almost exactly like it did 4 months ago. You did the work. Where's the payoff? Here's the question running underneath this entire video. If saving money is supposed to feel like building something, why does the beginning of it feel like doing a lot of work for almost nothing? My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time studying the exact psychology of why saving money feels the way it does at every stage. Because it turns out, almost nobody explains why the early part feels this flat and disappointing, even when you're doing everything correctly. If you've ever felt like your effort wasn't showing up on the screen the way it should, this video is going to explain exactly why. So go ahead and subscribe and drop a like if it helps this make sense. Now, before we get into why your account feels stuck even when it isn't, let's talk about the math nobody shows you when you're starting out. Here's the uncomfortable truth about the early stage of saving. For a while, almost all of the growth in your account comes from you. Not from interest, not from investment returns, not from any of the exciting mechanisms people talk about when they explain how money grows. It comes from the literal dollars you're physically putting in every month. If you're saving $300 a month, your account goes up by roughly $300 a month, because that's exactly what's happening. You're not seeing compound growth yet because there's nothing meaningful for it to compound on top of. The engine everyone talks about, the one.
There's a specific reason this early stretch feels so disproportionately discouraging, and it comes down to something mathematicians call the shape of an exponential curve. Early on, an exponential curve looks almost identical to a flat line because the compounding effect is operating on such a small base that its contribution rounds down to nearly nothing. Your brain, understandably, reads that flat-looking stretch as evidence that nothing is working. But a flat-looking exponential curve and a genuinely broken system produce the exact same visual result at this stage. There is no way to visually distinguish just by looking at month 8 whether compounding is quietly gathering momentum or simply absent altogether. The only way to tell the difference is to already know the math, which is precisely the information almost nobody hands you before you start. Now, picture someone named Priya. Priya is 26, works in marketing, and started putting $300 a month into an investment account 8 months ago after finally getting serious about her finances. She checks the account religiously, sometimes twice a week, watching the number, waiting for the moment it starts to feel like something. 8 months in, she's contributed $2,400. The account shows $2,460. $60 of growth. $60 after 8 months of discipline, of skipping things she wanted, of feeling proud of herself every time that automatic transfer went through. She starts wondering if she's doing something wrong. Maybe she picked the wrong fund. Maybe everyone talking about compound interest online is exaggerating. Maybe this whole thing just doesn't work the way people say it does. Here's what almost nobody tells Priya, and it has a real explanation. The math isn't broken, and neither is she. $60 of growth on $2,400 over 8 months is not a sign that something's wrong. It's exactly what the math predicts at that stage. Every single time, for everyone, no exceptions. The account isn't failing to grow. It simply doesn't have enough mass yet for.
And there's a comparison problem sitting right underneath this, making it feel even worse. Priya has a coworker, Sam, who started investing 4 years before she did, and now casually mentions market movements like it's small talk. Sam's account moved by more in one decent month than Priya's has moved in the last 8 combined. Not because Sam is smarter or more disciplined, but because Sam already has the mass for compounding to work on. Priya sees the size of Sam's gains and assumes there's some gap in skill or knowledge between them. There isn't. There's a gap in time, and time is the one variable that math absolutely refuses to let you skip, no matter how much effort you throw at it. What makes this comparison especially unfair, though Priya doesn't realize it yet, is that Sam went through this exact same flat, discouraging stretch 4 years ago, and Sam has almost certainly forgotten what it felt like. People rarely narrate their boring early months to anyone because there's nothing interesting to say about a savings account that grew by $60. Sam's early flat period simply isn't part of the story he tells, not out of dishonesty, but because it genuinely wasn't memorable. So Priya is comparing her visible beginning to Sam's invisible middle, without either of them realizing that's what's happening. Here's where it actually gets interesting, and this is the part that reframes basically everything Priya's been feeling. The early flat stretch isn't a sign that saving doesn't work. It's the specific, unavoidable price of admission for the part that eventually does. Every single person who is...
So what changes for Priya from here, practically speaking? Nothing dramatic, and that's actually the point. She keeps contributing the same $300 a month. Nothing about her strategy needs to change, because the strategy was never broken in the first place. What needs to change is her expectation of what month 8 or month 15 or month 20 is supposed to feel like. If she keeps going, by month 18, her account starts to feel slightly less flat. By month 30, the growth line starts to visibly separate from her contribution line for the first time. By year 5, she'll be somewhere in the neighborhood Sam is in right now. Not because she got lucky or smarter, but because she simply let enough time pass while refusing to quit during the part that felt like nothing was happening. The actual lesson buried in all of this is that patience in personal finance isn't a virtue in the abstract, motivational poster sense. It's a literal mechanical requirement of how compounding works. You cannot negotiate your way past it, and you cannot out-effort it by contributing more aggressively for a shorter period, because the math needs elapsed time specifically, not just total dollars. Someone who contributes $300 a month for 10 years will in almost every realistic scenario end up further ahead than someone who contributes $600 a month for 5 years, purely because of how much longer the first person's early dollars had to sit and compound. Time isn't just helpful here, it's the actual active ingredient. One thing worth mentioning here, because it can genuinely help during the flat stretch, is deliberately not checking the account as often as Priya does. This sounds counterintuitive coming from someone talking about being informed with your money, but checking a slow-moving number twice a week just maximizes your exposure to disappointment without giving you any actionable information. Nothing Priya does